Yuel's far-standing heavy slash has a buff. The forward hurt box prior to the active frames has been shortened, meaning that it's harder for a normal to stuff this move on startup. However, this kind of feels like a meaningless change. Yuel doesn't really use her far-standing heavy slash in neutral to poke with. She's going to be doing that with far medium slash. It's got 2 hits, and you can react to it hitting with a super as well in those situations where you need that last hit to kill. So overall, I'm not so sure what the point of far-standing heavy slash getting this buff is for. The second ever crouching heavy has reduced launch height. This means that it's easier for her to chain together some anti-air combos. Before, this might be a situation that you would get if you hit close to max range on your anti-air. This is what it looks like now. As you can see, you're able to link into your stance down heavy slash now a lot more consistently. This will improve the overall ability for her to reliably anti-air opponents and get decent rewards. The light, medium, and heavy versions of Starlet Sky have all had their travel speed and distance increased. That's what the light version looked like before. This here's the medium. And this is the heavy. Here's how these moves behave now. As you can see, it's noticeable on the light version. A good improvement to the medium. And a little noticeable as well in the EX. The medium version had 2 specific changes to it. The startup has been reduced by 4 frames, so now it hits on frame 14 instead of frame 18. This potentially opens up new combo routes for Yuel to use to get this knockdown situation now. The final hit of the heavy version has increased lateral knockback. This is the new distance. This was the old knockback. A little closer than before, as you can tell. It's a nice buff for her because now she's able to convert into wall bounce combos in the corner from farther out. This will increase her overall damage in situations where she's pushing the corner from mid-screen into the corner, so it's a nice change for her. Ultimate Starlet Sky has a couple of changes. The damage per hit has been adjusted. Before, the first hit would do 400, the sequence of multi-hits in the middle did 200 each, and then the final hit would do 700. Now, both the first and the last hit do 900, while the middle hits all do 100 damage. I think this just means that if you miss the first part of this move, you're not going to miss out on as much damage as you did before. Spaced out with 4 hits, we do 2,000 damage here. This was the old damage. 1,500 damage from 4 hits. A couple other changes applied is that the lateral knockback on the final hit has been increased, and the window for corner follow-up attacks has also been increased. This means that you're once again able to use this from mid-screen at further distances and then get wall bounce combos in the corner, better extending Yuel's mid-screen damage into the corner. And there is a nerf to this, though. The move no longer pushes Yuel back when it's blocked in the corner. Before, this would have behaved like. You'd be spaced out a little bit, -4 and safe, probably playing RPS at this point. This is what the new pushback looks like. You're a little closer to the opponent now. At this point, this is a fairly universal change to many ultimate skill moves that had a lot of situations where you could use this against an opponent blocking in the corner and be safe and create an RPS situation. Just like all those other moves, you can now reliably throw punish Yuel for doing this and put her into the corner. One final change to it is that, upon completion, you can immediately go into third dance. You can tap the unique button pretty early on in the hits, too, to set this up. This will streamline any sort of combos you want to do using any stance normal. The same change has been applied to her ultimate DP, Hien Homuragaishi. Now, we'll talk about this change a little bit more. This is where I had to give a big shout out to one of the Colorado FGC members, TrueTech, who's actually our Winter Showdown champion for Grand Blue Fantasy Versus, and he played Yuel to do it earlier this year, around March of 2024. According to TrueTech, this is a fairly negligible change overall for Yuel. In block string pressure, you would basically use her EXDP to try and bust out instead. The only difference between her EXDP and the ultimate version of the DP is about 3 frames of startup, so there are some safe jumps where you actually want to use the ultimate version of her DP to punish those jump-ins that aren't safe to an 8-frame reversal, while they are safe to an 11-frame reversal. That being said, those situations are few and far in between, especially now that some characters do have buffs to their safe jump. Zeta is one that comes to mind, for example, off of her throws. And again, with some of the changes to the third dance in this patch, he's not a big fan of it anymore, and I'm afraid of what that's going to mean when we get into the stance itself. The ultimate version of Hanarashi had the lateral knockback on its final hit reduced. Before, if you got a hit in mid-screen, this would be about the situation you'd be finding yourself in. You can get a far medium here. This is what it looks like now. You're able to link a close medium slash off of this now, which will improve her combo stability and overall damage from this starter. It's a welcome change for her since this move is still +4 on block. It has another additional factor to it now as well. Just like with many of her other ultimate skills, she's able to enter into third eye stance from this. So being +4 and then going into your mix-up stance is a nice little change for her off of this. Inversely to all the other ultimate skill changes we've seen so far, the ultimate Fox Flame no longer automatically enters third dance upon completion. You can stay in your normal stance right here. This opens up some better confirms.
Great.
However, if you want to enter stance, you still can by pressing the unique skill button. It's nice to have this versatility, I suppose. As Trichek says, this would be considered one of her best changes within the patch itself, because now you're able to convert your far-range pokes into even more meaningful damage than before using this technique.
Great.
There's obviously more to do here. Now we're getting into the third dance changes, which is honestly going to make or break the character and whether or not people continue to play her in this patch. There's a fundamental rework happening underneath. All of her attacks and stance now do chip damage. So ultimately, this means that from stance, she's able to actually threaten a kill situation on you by chip kill. So it is a buff, but there's some implication to this, which we're going to explore later down the line when we get into more changes regarding her stance. There's a note here for third dance's light attack. The frames between the light and medium follow-up have been increased by 2 frames. The adjustment was made apparently so that with the reduced startup of the new standing medium attack in third dance, they avoided changing the number of punishable frames, which we're about to get into here. Now let's get into the meat of the third dance changes, which is going to be the 5M version. There's a lot of things that are happening right here, so first off, let's compare. Third dance's medium attack was a huge cornerstone in making Yuel a pressure monster when she went into third eye stance. For starters, this was plus on block. It was 16 frame startup, but there was also a mid, so you didn't have to worry about blocking high or low over here. She was +2, so she was able to take her turn once again. Furthermore, on hit, it put the opponent into a crouching state and you'd be +7, meaning that you could go for this option, which crushed lows. So if someone was trying to crouch and mash out with a 2L low, you'd be able to punish that and then get a combo on counter hit or even just on regular hit if for some reason they didn't block this.
Great.
There's a lot of things going that really well for it here. But now, instead of being a pressure reset tool for Yuel to maintain her stance pressure, it becomes a cheeky little overhead that she can throw out to catch an unawares opponent. It's had its startup frame reduced by 2, so now it's a 14-frame overhead. This is fundamentally very hard to react to, especially when you're talking about playing offline on the console, where you have about 2.5 frames of input delay on a PlayStation 4 Pro or a PlayStation 5 version of the console, which is what you're going to be playing on if you go out to events like Combo Breaker, EVO, and other majors around the United States. You'll also note that on successful hit, you'll get no reward for this. There is a possibility that you can link it off of a counter hit, basically harkening back to being able to combo on this after you crush a low with it. It is a crouching 2L link, so there is something here, but the opponent has to press into you, which, to be fair, they are going to be a little more inclined to do when we talk about another change regarding her third dance stance in a little bit. However, now instead of being plus on block, you're -6, which at this range basically means that you're eating a light punish. Overall, this completely reworks Yuel's offense with the stance. Before, she was a pressure machine that was able to use third dance attack medium, 5M, in order to reset her offense, crush out low pokes, and continue alternating through her options until eventually she committed to something. Maybe catching the opponent with one of her low options, or able to use the throw option to catch them unawares in the corner. But now, she feels more like a cheeky, high-low mix-up character, which for some people might be fun there, but there's a lot more risk going on when she plays that game because, again, if you block the safe lows, you're open up to more damage, but if she throws out the risky overhead, you'll take 1300, or if you're able to block it, you'll be able to punish her for far more damage than she was threatening you with in the first place. It's a change for sure. We don't know if it's better or if it's worse, but it is a change. If you played Yuel because you liked her endless offense from stance, you might want to reconsider it, whereas if you always wanted her to have a little more mix-up from the stance, well, I suppose now you haven't. Her Gurren in stance received a change too. The hit stop has been increased, so now at point blank, instead of being -6 and punishable, she's -4. Granted, if you're this close to somebody, you're basically within range to be throw punished for it anyway. If you're spaced out though, you're able to be plus off of it. The down heavy of her stance, Yugetsu, has a reduction in startup. It used to be 11 frames, now it's 10. Certainly this opens up more utility for it, able to make new links with it, more combo friendly. It's a nice change for her overall in regards to the combo game. In the previous version, whenever Yuel entered into the third dance, she had a passive going for her called Eye of the Sparrow. Basically what this meant is that any attack that was a mid, so no lows, no overheads, would automatically be parried by her if the opponent tried to swing. This worked against a lot of things, including any mid attack outside of fireballs. This would also parry DPs, even ultimate DPs, even the startup of supers. Basically, when she had you on knockdown and she was in this stance, you didn't really have any reversal option against her. This gave her a guaranteed way of starting up a pressure. Now, of course, if she committed to an attack in this stance, she wasn't going to have Eye of the Sparrow activated, so your attacks would then go through. But at the very least, she could stand there passively and wait to see if you did anything on Wake Up, and once she saw that you were going to hold her pressure, she could begin her offense. In the current patch, Eye of the Sparrow is no longer a passive inherent to third dance. Instead, Eye of the Sparrow is now an active skill that she can use while in third dance. By pressing the skill button or doing an DP input with light, medium, heavy, or even you get the parry animation. Regardless of how you input it, the damage and properties all remain the same. You get 1300 damage and a little bit of a launch. I'm not sure if you actually get any combo off of this. On a successful counter, you can cancel out of stance. If you saw that little particle effect around Yuel, that's the notification that you did it. The parry will work against lows, highs, and mids now, but it still does not work against projectile attacks. The active frames for the parry as well are frames 1 through 10, so it's pretty fast overall. However, there is a total animation now that plays out over 35 frames. So there's 25 frames of recovery after you go into this stance in the first. But now you might be asking, well, mangaka, if I'm just reading that they're going to DP on Wake Up, why not parry? Well, the answer is this. You can no longer parry many supers and dragon punches within the game. Before, if Grant woke up with a heavy DP, you'd be able to parry it automatically if you didn't do any action in your third eye stance, and then be able to hit him out of it. Now check out what happens if you read this successfully and you try to parry it. You get the startup animation for it, but then you're completely clocked out by the rest of the DP here. Parry does not function anymore against these wake up options. This means that if the opponent wakes up and has the opportunity to reverse you and they see that you're waiting in your third dance, they can just go ahead and send this and pretty much hit you out of it. Of course, there are some things that you can do about this. On knockdown, for example, you could feint going into a stance and then recover out of it by disengaging before the opponent wakes up and throws out this option in order to punish them. But this is again a hard read on your behalf, as well as giving up your stance to... Against supers, Yuel does have an option in her third eye stance to deal with them, and that's going to be to evade. However, that's all she can do, as she does not possess the ability to cross over while she's in third eye stance. So because of this, if you're up against a super where you need to cross over in order to evade it, then you're out of luck. Whereas against other supers where you don't need that, you'll be fine. So that's going to be some of the mind games that Yuel has to deal with. Just an example of one such super where evading it is not going to save you. Sure, you're not taking the full bit of damage here, but you're still getting hit, taking damage, and losing your offensive turn. And if you're hanging out in stance and the opponent chooses to wake up with a super, you might think, well, maybe I can just cancel out a stance and then block the super in time. Not with the 12-frame recovery period that you had from going out of stance where you're in a punished hit state. With Eye of the Sparrow now no longer able to deal with reversals as well, the opponent is effectively invited to throw those out whenever Yuel enters the stance against them. Sure, she'd be able to threaten a chip-out kill situations, whereas before, she didn't really have that option outside of special moves, so it can be pesky to close out rounds in moments where the opponent doesn't have their DP up, doesn't have a DP on their character, or doesn't have access to a Skybound art. But when they do have those resources available, UL players now have to think twice about going into stance because their parry doesn't beat those options anymore. It feels like a fundamental reworking of the character from a pressure monster into like a more gimmicky overhead resetting kind of character, which I don't think is going to vibe with a lot of people. Speaking on behalf of TrueTech, after he helped me with all these notes, he's basically saying that while she's better off with some things like better combo routes, a little better neutral here and there, the whole identity of character has been shifted off of her stance, and he doesn't want to play her the way she is anymore. Not to say that she's bad, necessarily. She is simply different, and if you liked how UL played before, you might not like how she plays now. I would have to say that we're going to have to see overall if these changes are better for her or if they're actually worse for her. For now, she is fundamentally a different character, and she is less interested in using her stance overall, I would think.